Review copy provided by Nintendo. You are so awesome. Thank you so much. Whoa. Hello, my good friends. Arlo here, and today I'm reviewing Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. It's been 20 long years since Pokemon first graced my neon green Game Boy Color. So, the question is, are these games the very best like no game ever was? Or do they lack the skills to be number one? Let's find out. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee are interesting games to review because these are remakes of games that I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on when I was a kid, but they're also my first Pokemon games since Black and White. I will ask that you keep that in mind if I start going on about a feature or a mechanic that's like, yeah, Arlo, we've had that since X and Y. I also haven't played any Pokemon Go, so I'm going at this game, or these games, whatever. You know what, I'm just going to keep it simple and say this game. I'm going at this game with something of a unique perspective. I also wrote this review under the assumption that you've played Red, Blue, or Yellow, or at the very least know enough about Pokemon that you don't need me to summarize the game and its mechanics. You catch monsters, you fight them, you level them up, you beat gyms. Yeah, you probably know all that by now. Now, it's funny because I spent a lot of the game feeling really torn on nearly every aspect, and for a while I had a weirdly hard time knowing if I was having fun or not. Like, seriously, my friends would be like, how's the game so far? And I'd be like, I really don't know. I think I'm having fun. There are so many changes in this game that it took a while for my brain to process all of them, but they have now been processed and I have finished the game, so let's talk about them. The biggest change without a doubt is the way that you now capture Pokemon. First off, instead of getting into random battles, you can now see wild Pokemon running around the field and you can run up to them to engage with them. I tell ya, this is one of the few aspects of the game that I am not torn on. This is incredible. This changes everything. I'm of the opinion that random battles are just awful and should have been replaced a long time ago. I enjoyed most of the games that I've played, but being in any place where everything was basically like grass and you could get into a random battle with absolutely any step you took anywhere, I've always thought that was stressful and awful. Getting into battle after battle made traversing water and caves and places like the mansion or the power plant some of my least favorite parts of playing Pokemon, and it discouraged me from going off the beaten path and exploring. All of that is gone now. You can now move freely no matter where you are, and only sometimes will you find hitting a Pokemon unavoidable. This shouldn't make that much of a difference, but I seriously think it increases the overall enjoyment level a huge amount. It makes the simple act of moving around the world of Pokemon several times more fun. And of course, it's just convenient being able to see what Pokemon are around you so you can only bother with the ones you're interested in. There's even a little thrill that comes with hearing the cry of a Pokemon you're looking for before you even see it. And in future games, I could imagine them adding in a whole system of having to sneak up on a Pokemon before it runs away. I think that'd be really fun. The second thing that changes how you catch Pokemon is the removal of battles with wild Pokemon. Instead of fighting them, you enter into this little mini game where you just kinda throw Pokeballs at them. Sometimes they jump around and they all attack on occasion, which doesn't hurt you but does interrupt any catch attempts for a moment. You can give them berries to make them easier to catch or keep them from moving around too much, and the most important thing to do is to try to aim for the center of this circle. The smaller the circle is when the ball hits, the better the throw. This is disappointing for obvious reasons. Weakening a Pokemon and trying to catch it without knocking it out was always a lot of fun. It's been one of Pokemon's primary mechanics since the very beginning. Removing that makes the game seem shallow and kinda handholdy at first. The thing is, this streamlining process opens up new possibilities. First, you no longer have to keep weaklings in your party so that you've always got someone who can fight low-level Pokemon. No matter who's in your party, you're always equipped to catch a Pokemon as long as you've got the right Pokeballs for the job, which is basically always because balls are cheap and the game gives them to you by the boatload. More importantly though, this streamlining of the catching process brings a new system where it's less about just catching the Pokemon you want and more about catching lots and lots of Pokemon. Catching tons of one species all in a row does multiple things. It gives you a catch combo, which increases the experience you gain with each catch, and it raises the chances of catching a shiny variety or one with high stats. Sending these excess Pokemon to Professor Oak gets you lots of candies that increase your Pokemon's various stats. This whole system of catching and candy seems, to me at least as a guy who hasn't really played the other recent games, like a replacement for the Eevee system. I'm not sure if there's still something of an Eevee thing in this game, I can't really tell. I'm not extremely well versed on the topic. I absolutely hate the Eevee system. I'm not gonna go into what it is or how it generally works or even exactly why I hate it, but basically I've just always thought it was a dumb system that only made the game less fun. Like, hey, you wanna have a strong Pokemon? Don't have fun playing Pokemon. But here, instead of breeding endless eggs and trying to fill them up with just the right stat points as fast as you can, lest you should accidentally ruin the build you're going for, you just keep catching. And you know what? Between hunting for the right Pokemon in the grass and the actual catching minigame, the entire process is really fun. Certainly more fun than running around in circles on your bike and grinding on one specific wild Pokemon forever. You even get the ability to judge how good a Pokemon's stats are right there in your menu, so there's no more guesswork. And the process of just feeding your Pokemon candy to give them the right stats is really intuitive and allows for easier customization than ever. Since you can't fight most wild Pokemon in this game, catching becomes your primary source of XP. And this is the sort of thing that could get tedious really quick, so there are a few elements that help keep things interesting. Like I said, the catching mechanic is a pretty good time. There's the simple fun of aiming and trying to land an excellent catch, but more important are all the factors that increase your earned XP. There's the catch combo, then you get a boost for catching a Pokemon with your first throw, or getting an excellent catch, or grabbing a particularly large or small specimen, among other things. It's great fun to try and get as many multipliers as you can, and the thrill of getting a really meaty chunk of XP from a perfect catch makes the whole process pretty addictive. And just to inject one more little bit of fun into catching, you actually do battle legendaries. You have to knock them out before you get a chance to throw a ball, so there you go. Legendaries were always the most fun to fight and catch, so that's one element that's largely intact. Swinging back to XP though, another interesting change in this game is automatic XP share. Like, you don't get an item or anything. XP is always shared across your whole party, no matter what. This is another thing that on the surface seems pretty lame. I mean, geez, how much are you gonna streamline this game? You're not gonna make us work for anything now, are you? Like, I caught a low-level Charmander just for collection purposes and just didn't get around to taking him out of my party. He leveled up along with all my other Pokemon, eventually evolving into a Charizard despite the fact that I never used him even once in battle. Finally, I started needing a fire guy and I was just like, okay, fine. I guess Charizard is one of my main fighters now. It does remove some of the satisfaction of building up a Pokemon with your own two hands. It does sometimes feel like you're getting something for nothing. But on the other hand, it's kind of nice. I just don't have the time for endless grinding like I used to, and this really keeps the game moving at a good pace without requiring a huge amount of your time as an investment. I hate that being a busy grown-up with a busy job can affect my feelings on a game so strongly, but that's the reality here. Lacking the proper time and patience was one of the reasons I've stayed away from Pokemon for so many years, but this made for a really smooth and manageable experience. There are other new conveniences as well. HMs are a thing of the past, and I could not be happier. It sounds like this is indeed something that's already happened in the 3DS games, I don't know, but this is new to me. Instead of HMs, your partner Pokemon just learns these abilities, and you don't even have to have them in your party to use them. So in addition to not needing weak Pokemon to fight little guys, you also don't need throwaway Pokemon just to use your HMs. The result is, for the first time in my entire Pokemon playing life, the ability to have a full party consisting only of Pokemon that I like, that I want to raise and fight with. For perhaps the first time ever, I feel like I'm a real Pokemon trainer with a real team. I can finally enjoy a variety of Pokemon instead of just having a few heavy hitters. More on this in a bit though. Another convenience is that you no longer have to visit a PC in order to change out your team. You can access your Pokemon box right from your menu. This is another one of those things where I was like, come on, you're just making everything too easy now. And then like 4 seconds later, I was like, oh no, yeah, this is way better. Like, where's the line between holding a player's hand too much and just offering them a more pleasant experience? Sure, there's something to be said about being stuck with your team wherever you go and having to plan ahead, but there's also something to be said about being able to swap your guys out easily without having to hike all the way back to a Pokemon Center every time you want to make a change. It's just nice this way. In the end, it's just more convenient and fun. Similarly, you can now use TMs as many times as you want. Also, possibly a thing that's already happened in other games, I don't know, sorry. Well, whatever the case, this is just better. Less challenging for sure. Use a one-of-a-kind TM on the wrong guy and you're out of luck. But here, it's just nice to have the freedom to experiment without having to worry so much. Once you have a TM, you can always teach your Pokemon that move, and even if that makes the game easier, it also just makes it more fun. One change that I found particularly interesting was how developing a strong bond with your Pokemon has a big effect on battles. If your Pokemon loves you, they'll grant you random little perks in battle. Every once in a while, if they take a finishing blow, they'll hang on with a single remaining HP, or they'll deliver a critical hit because they want praise from you, or they'll randomly shrug off a status effect so you don't worry about them. This is yet another one of those things that feels like it might be making the game too easy. Some of these little bonuses can really change the tide of battle, but at the same time, doesn't this also kind of make sense? It makes your Pokemon feel much more alive. It makes battles feel a little less mechanical. It's a reward for treating your Pokemon well and sticking with your team for a long while. So, I don't know, it's weird, but I think I kind of like it. Here's another change that I could see someone being upset about. Maybe they would think it made the game too easy or something, I don't really know, but I only think it's a good thing. Previously, there were quite a lot of Pokemon that you could only get one of, even besides legendaries. Someone in the game would give them to you, or trade them for a different Pokemon, or you had to get them as a starter. I mean, starters in particular have been treated like these sacred things. You could get them all in yellow, but you could still only get one of each. And Let's Go though, Squirtle, Farfetch, Hitmonlee, Snorlax, they're all just walking around waiting to be caught. When I wanted a Bulbasaur, don't you dare judge me, I just hunted around in the grass until I found one. Because why not? Why limit access to so many Pokemon? This way you can catch all the Pokés you want, looking for good stats and shinies and all that if you so desire. It's just very refreshing. And you know what? Here's the thing about this game. A lot of these modern conveniences make it sound way too easy, way too hand-holdy and streamlined and casual and all that. And in fact, it being stupidly, preposterously easy is one of the complaints I often hear about it. But here's my thing. I might just be playing the game wrong, maybe there's a feature I'm missing, or grinding for hours and hours and hours is completely expected, I don't know. But the way I see it at least, it's only easy because your main partner Pokemon, whether it's Pikachu or Eevee, is so strong. They've got a full set of perfect stats and they're given these incredible moves, especially Eevee. He can learn all these attacks with a power of 90 and a 100% chance to cause a status effect super early in the game. Use Pikachu or Eevee the whole game, you'll blast through everything, no problem. But you know what I did? I didn't do that. I took Eevee out of my party. And again, maybe I'm just missing something here, but the result was actually one of the most difficult Pokemon experiences I've had. In the past, I've always just used one or two Pokemon, and with them hogging all the experience, they would get super strong and just be able to one-shot every opponent they came across. This made for some very, very easy Pokemoning. But here, XP share doesn't just share from a limited pool. It doesn't seem to matter how many Pokemon are in your party. Each one gets the same amount. The Pokemon that does the actual fighting does get a little more than the others, but it ain't by much. Everyone grows at a very similar rate, with no real way to beef up any one guy beyond hunting down rare candies. This makes it surprisingly difficult to level up a smaller newcomer. You can't just start a battle with them out and then switch to a better Pokemon to give them a massive boost. You really just have to keep them in your party and wait as they get stronger, fighting with them whenever possible just for the little extra bit of XP. The ultimate result of this sharing system is that if you really want to grind, you've got to catch tons and tons of Pokemon. I'm not super into this, so my only option was to just keep pushing forward. But since I couldn't just focus on one or two guys to overpower them, and I didn't want to use my OP starter, I constantly found myself fighting trainers with levels similar to mine. I actually kinda struggled. I had real battles with Pokemon that were fairly matched. I actually had to build up a good, diverse team and use actual strategy in battle, and make sure I was matching the right types and using the right moves, and equipping myself with the right healing items so I was never caught off guard. It kind of felt like the experience I was probably supposed to be having all these years, you know what I mean? It was so much more rewarding than I expected it to be going in. Sure, spend a couple hours comboing Chanseys and you'll have that easy experience everyone's talking about, but just keep marching forward and you'll have a much harder time like I did. Let's switch gears and talk about presentation. Perhaps unsurprisingly, I am somewhat torn. Pokemon Let's Go's graphics and art style are certainly nice. The game is colorful, it's smooth, the Pokemon look pretty good, it's overall pleasant. But this really does look and feel like a 3DS game that was up-resed a little and plunked onto the Switch. Everything is very simplistic, still employing a grid system with a mostly static camera, despite the fact that neither of those things are needed anymore. Character animations can be really stiff and awkward, like we're looking at HD skins sitting on top of old-timey sprites. This kind of stuff has worked on handhelds of old, like the 3DS, but I'm of the opinion that a Switch game shouldn't feel like a handheld game, at least not when they're charging full price for it. I know, people always get mad at me when I bring price into the picture, but in this case, I can't not. Let's Go's presentation is fine, it works, but it works for a $40 3DS game. It doesn't work for a $60 Switch game. I'm not looking for gritty realism here, I'm not looking for something amazing, I'm not looking for Breath of the Wild or something. Plenty of other Switch games have graphics that are smooth, colorful, and pleasant, but they still look like $60 graphics. You can still tell that a lot of care and effort went into the design. Let's Go just plain feels lazy in this department. There's no reason this couldn't have looked better. If they were going to remake the original Pokemon games on current-gen Nintendo hardware, there's no reason they couldn't have truly remade the world and turned it into a more natural-looking place, instead of just a reskinned Game Boy game with all the same perfectly straight lines and perfectly perpendicular trails and roads and completely static top-down camera. It's not the end of the world or anything, but man, I can only hope that they put a lot more effort into next year's title. You're working with console power now, guys. These should be the console Pokemon experiences we've always wanted, not simplistic handheld games that just keep getting scaled up. Just remember to smash that dislike button, guys. No, rant over. The graphics may be disappointing, but charm and flavor are things that this game brings by the boatload. Any single Pokemon in your inventory can run along behind you, and you can even ride some of them. I had dreamed of riding on my very own Dragonite since I was a wee lad, and this game made that dream a reality. Having this constant connection with your Pokemon not only makes them like you more, which I talked about earlier, but more than ever, it makes you feel like you're a real Pokemon trainer. You're really on this adventure. These aren't just video game characters that you keep in little balls until you need to fight with them. They're your buds. They follow you and you can check on them to see what they're feeling, and they can run off and find berries and bushes for you. When I was a kid, I would feel these bonds with my Pokemon, and I would imagine them having personalities and enjoying their time with me. But now I don't have to pretend nearly as hard. It's all totally silly and childlike and means very little as far as actual gameplay goes, but it's something I can really appreciate from a feel perspective. Another really excellent thing that makes the world of Pokemon feel much more real. All Pokemon in this game appear to be to scale, meaning that however big the Pokédex says a Pokemon is, that's how big it is. Meowth doesn't come up to a person's waist like in the anime. Meowth is like a foot tall. He's tiny. Haunter isn't this small to medium-sized ghost guy. He's stinking huge. He's so big you can ride him. When you see an Onix out in the wild, you see an Onix out in the wild. It's another thing that probably shouldn't be as big a deal as it is, but I just absolutely love it. Something I found surprisingly endearing was just how faithful to the originals the writing in this game is. It's been a long while since I've played those old games, but right from the start it was obvious that the vast majority of dialogue has been retained here, and more than ever, I can see how awkwardly red, blue, and yellow were translated. Sometimes it feels like this game was written by a 6-year-old, or by someone who has very little understanding of how humans actually speak and act, and I would not have it any other way. It adds a crazy amount of charm to the game, and really helps drive that nostalgia home, perhaps more than anything else, funny enough. So far, we've talked about a lot of good stuff, and even some stuff that seemed bad at first, but ended up being kind of good in its own way. But now we come to two huge bad stuffs. The baddest stuff thing of them all is how this game controls. If there's some feature that makes a game control less ideally in one of the Switch's modes, that mode is usually handheld. Take Super Mario Odyssey, for instance, with its moves that can only be performed with 2 detached Joy-Cons, which is not something you can manage in handheld mode. But Pokemon Let's Go is the opposite. In handheld, you can play the game as you would like. Control stick on the left, buttons on the right. That's generally how people with 2 hands like to play video games. When you catch a Pokemon, you aim using the gyro, and you hit the A button to throw your Pokeball. Alright, great. But in docked mode, despite the fact that the game was programmed to accept inputs from a regular controller, as we see in handheld mode, you are forced to use 1 single Joy-Con. Oh, but that's not so bad, right? I mean, Mario Party makes you do that. Oh, no, wait, not a single Joy-Con like that. A single Joy-Con like that. If you are playing on the TV, you have to play with one hand. You have to move your character with the stick and constantly flick your finger up to the buttons. This is miserable. Nintendo has made some baffling decisions in the past when it comes to control schemes, but this just might take the cake. Oh, but it gets worse. When you catch Pokemon in docked mode, you have to flick the Joy-Con like you're throwing a Pokeball, but proper aiming is incredibly difficult. They're trying to emulate the feeling of throwing an actual Pokeball here, I'm sure, but for me to throw with any accuracy at all, I have to awkwardly jerk the Joy-Con away from the center of my face directly at the Pokemon like I'm throwing a dart, because even the slightest bit of sideways motion will send it flying way off course. And even when I'm meticulous with my throws, half the time my Pokeballs will fly off to the side anyway, seemingly for no reason at all. The overall result is that this game is an awful chore to play on the TV. Sometimes my eyes are too tired to stare at the little switch screen in front of my face, and my fingers are cramped from holding the Joy-Cons for too long, and I just want to relax and veg out on the TV. And playing with one hand, I can sort of grudgingly get a little used to if I do it long enough, and I switch hands every once in a while to try and reduce the cramping, but catching Pokemon is never anything but inaccurate and janky and frustrating. Other people have said it before me, but if Game Freak forced this one-handed motion control scheme because they thought otherwise people wouldn't want to use it, that calls into question whether it was a good idea in the first place. Personally, I have not spoken with even one single person who enjoys this system and wouldn't change it in a heartbeat if they could. And if they forced it in order to sell more Pokeball Pluses, well, here it is. I feel kind of bad because Nintendo sent me this so I could talk about it in my review, and I really appreciate that, I really do, but this is not a fun accessory to use. This is everything bad about the one-handed control scheme made 3 times worse. It takes an annoying amount of extra effort to click in the stick without moving it. I constantly have to readjust my hand to click the button on the top, and the thing cramps my hand more than ever. Not exaggerating, it only takes about 5 minutes before my fingers start to actually hurt, and I can't handle much more than 10 or 15 without lasting pain. So I'm sorry I couldn't do more with this in my review or say anything good about it, but I just don't think this little thing is worth the trouble. I mean, I guess it does do a few things beyond acting as a controller. It does let you have a Mew, so I guess that's kind of cool. You can stick your Pokemon in it and walk around to give them some extra XP, and I'm sure I would have been crazy about that at another time in my life. And, it's nice as a toy. It's got a nice weight to it. Ampharos, I choose you. Shwam, shwam. That's actually pretty nice. The final big bad thing I'll mention about the game is the lack of post-game content. When you beat the Elite Four and go catch Mewtwo, you are basically done. There's like one thing that opens up, and I guess you can skip ahead a bit if you don't want spoilers, but it's really nothing special. 151 Master Trainers pop up all over the world. Each one has a single Pokemon, so you're basically tasked with beating every single Pokemon in the game. This is an awesome idea, until you realize that to fight each one, you have to use these same Pokemon they do, and their Pokemon are at ridiculous levels. Feel like taking a wimpy first stage Pokemon and grinding it all the way up to level 80 without letting it evolve? Yeah? Okay, now do the same with every single other Pokemon too. I'm all for a good challenge, but this is an unnecessarily difficult challenge that would require hours upon hours of boring grinding. It might be slightly forgivable if there were any other mid-level challenges, but there just aren't. You're beating the main game with relative ease, or you're spending days and days of your waking life grinding through Master Trainers. Well, hey, it has more content than the originals had, you might be saying. But every single Pokemon game beyond the originals that I've played at least has had at least a decent amount of post-game content, sometimes a lot of post-game content, and that's including the first remakes of these games on GBA. FireRed and Leaf Green had some extra islands you could get to with some extra tough trainers on them. They were really cool. They couldn't have at least put that stuff in there? As far as content goes, this game has less than 15-year-old GBA games. And that's really disappointing. I beat the Elite Four, and I was jazzed. I felt like I really had a great team of Pokemon. I was ready for something else, ready to tackle anything. But there was just nothing left to do. I enjoyed the game, and even now, I really want to keep playing, but there's no point. I find myself reaching for my Switch before I remember that I'm just done. It's one thing for a game to be so good that it leaves players wanting more, but it's another for a game to feel like a flight of stairs that ends too early, so you take a big stupid step not realizing that you're stepping onto nothing, and you feel really dumb and you hope no one saw you. And if I were the type of person who really wanted to get into this game, like I wanted to spend a ton of time catching all the perfect Pokemon and training up all the right stats with candies and basically just putting in a ton of effort, I would be more crushed than ever that there was so little to do after beating the Elite Four. It would feel even more like a gargantuan missed opportunity. Before I wrap this up, there's the multiplayer element to talk about, but I really don't have much to say. You can battle, you can trade, you can play co-op as well, and this is actually pretty cool even if I haven't played around with it a lot. It makes the game way too easy because now you've just got 2 people and 2 Pokemon instead of 1, but I really love the idea of working through a Pokemon adventure with another person by my side, and if there's anything that might bring me back to the game in the future, it's this. And yeah, it makes things easier, but this is Pokemon. It's a pretty simple thing to set restrictions on yourself to balance out the difficulty. Let's Go Eevee Co-op Nuzlocke. Any takers? At the end of the day, Pokemon Let's Go is a fairly mixed experience. There are several elements that bring the whole thing down or don't even try to live up to their potential, but it does a lot of stuff very, very right and brings a lot of concepts to the table that I would love to see again. In some ways, it provided me with a more satisfying experience than I've ever had with Pokemon, though being based on a 20-year-old Game Boy game that I've already played for hundreds and hundreds of hours does sort of limit the fun potential. The enjoyability does bode well for the future of Pokemon though, and because of this game, I can finally say I am actively jazzed for next year's title. Way more so than I was before. I've got a score for this game, and I think this just might be the absolute closest any game has ever been to tipping into the score above it. There are so many elements that would give it the boost it needed if they were improved, if the presentation was just a little more ambitious, or if there was just a little more post-game content, or if it didn't have absurd and completely avoidable control issues. As it is, it's good fun. It's not really good fun like it could have been, but a solid experience. I give Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and or Eevee a 5 out of 7. Before we go, let's go back in time to when I first got the game. So Nintendo was gonna give me a review code for the game, and they were like, hey, do you want us to send you a Pokeball Plus accessory too to play with? And I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll try that out. And then today in the mail, I get this big old box of stuff. And I'm like, no, there's a lot more than just a Pokeball accessory in here. So I tried not to look. I had a tiny peek, but I tried not to see, so that you could share in the surprise with me. So let's do it. What's in here? This is a mystery box from Nintendo. Final paper, save that for Christmas. Oh, there's so much stuff in here. Oh my gosh! Ah! Oh my gosh. Got myself a very own little Pikachu plushie. You know what? I've been a Pokemon fan for a long time. This is my first Pikachu plushie. Isn't that funny? That's funny, right? I've got some toys from when I was in middle school, but yeah, that's adorable. All right, what else we got? Oh, this is good. This is good stuff right here. Oh, I love Eevee. I've always really loved Eevee. Just so cute. Just so painfully cute. And now I have my very own little Eevee plushie with the big puffy tail. Pikachu and Eevee hats? That's adorable. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna look like the biggest dork when I wear these, and I don't even care. These are awesome. Oh my gosh. Wow, look at that. They sent me both. Fun. That's awesome. Now I can see what it's like to have a Pikachu and an Eevee. There's that Pokeball Plus accessory. Pretty neato. I've been wanting to get my hands on one of these to see how it feels. I mean, just, you know, there's always going to be that little part of me, that kid part that just wants to hold on to a Pokeball and just pretend like I'm throwing it and catching Pokemon and stuff. Like anytime when I was a kid and I would get like any toys or something, I would just sit there just holding it and just throwing it, and it's a good time. So yeah, I definitely wanted to get my hands on one of these, and just to... forget the playing part, just to hold it. Just to pretend like I've got a Pokeball for real, because that's the kind of guy I am. Ugh. Well, gosh, thanks so much, Nintendo. This is phenomenal. I really did just expect a, download code for the game or something, but this is terrific. This is super duper great. I'm building up a really nice little collection of stuff here to keep on my desk. Oh, it's adorable. Look at it. Puffy tail. Love it. Well, hey, thank you guys for watching. You guys have yourself a great day, and, no, you know what? Hope you like this. This is my new look. Whoops.